All right, so we've talked about the density of population. Let's talk about density of some actual substance. Now, a very interesting substance that you guys are probably familiar with is gold. And as it turns out, gold is one of the densest metals and just densest objects that we might interact with at some point in our life that in general. So, what is the density of gold? Well, gold the density is equal to, it's about 0.698 pounds per square inch. So if you think about it, what this is really saying is that if you had a little cube of gold that was 1 inch on each side, it would weigh more than half of a pound. It would almost be, it's basically a little bit more than 2/3 of a pound. So if you had 3 of these, it would be almost exactly a little bit over 2 pounds. Okay? As it turns out, that's pretty heavy. Now, it might not be obvious, but maybe if we do a couple problems, you will be able to see how that is true. So let's think to ourselves, let's think about, so how much gold is equal to the weight of like a person? And let's pretend there's some person, Sam, that is 150 pounds. So how many cubic inches of gold would we need for it to be the same weight as Sam? Now, this is a fairly simple thing to calculate once you know how to do it. And the idea is this. What you do is you start with what you have. You want to have 150 pounds, and you're going to multiply it by the density to a certain extent. But the idea is this. Right now, the inches are in the denominator, but we want our answer to have inches, and we want to cancel out the pounds, right? So when we have this is really saying that there are 0.698 pounds per 1 inch cubed. Okay, so we're going to make that kind of into a fraction. And so when we're multiplying, since we want the pounds to cancel out, what we're actually going to do is we're going to flip this fraction. Okay, so in this case, if we're trying to figure out how many cubic inches there are in 150 pounds, we're going to flip this, because what ends up happening is if we do pounds divided by pounds, those really cancel out. Okay, and so what we're actually going to do is we're going to multiply this by this fraction, which is really the same as just doing 150 divided by 0.698. So let's do that really quick. All right, hopefully you can kind of see this. 150 divided by 0.698. Okay, and you get 214. So there are 214.9. So let's just round that, since it's pretty close. We'll round it to the nearest inch. 215 cubic inches. Okay? Now, what does that mean? It's not very easy to figure out, or to kind of think, all right, so how many 215 cubic inches, how do I visualize this? Well, I've done some of the math for us, and if we take a cube, and you kind of have to think, right, if we want to find the volume, what we're going to do is we need to think of a number so that when if I want to find the volume, I'm going to multiply this cube each side 3 times, length times width times height, right? As it turns out, the magic number for this, and the way you could do it is you take the cubic root of 215, and that is closest to about 6 inches. So let's do that. Would be 6 inches, 6 inches, inches. Now, if you don't believe me, let's do volume equals length times width times height. And that is equal to 6 inches times 6 inches times 6 inches, which is equal to 216 cubic inches. And notice inches times inches times inches would be inches cubed. So all the units should be kind of making sense, okay? So what this is really saying is that gold is so dense. If you want as much gold as like a person who weighs 150 pounds, it would be 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inch cube. That's not that big. I mean, this would fit in this box that I'm kind of doing this video inside of, right? It would sit, let's see, the width of this piece of paper is 8.5 inches, so it would go maybe from here to here and from here to here. So here's your 6 inch by 6 inch square, and it would go up about 6 inches. Okay, so it's incredibly dense. It's much denser than a person, right? A person is much bigger than 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches. So that's pretty interesting to think about. That's just, if you had a piece of gold, you would feel it feels very heavy. And the reason why it feels heavy for how big it is because it's so dense. Okay, so we're going to think of this a little bit differently. But let's go over what we already know. So for gold, we said that the density is equal to 0.698 pounds per cubic inch. And a good way to think about this is as a ratio. What we're really saying is the ratio of pounds to 1 inch. There is 0.698 pounds in every cubic inch of gold. So a slightly different type of problem you can answer with this is, well, let's think of some amount of gold. So we already know what a square inch is. What about a square foot? Or I'm sorry, we know what a cubic inch is. How much we know that weighs about 0.698 pounds. What if we had a cubic foot? So a cubic foot would be a cube that is 1 foot on each side. Now, one thing we have to do before we're able to do this calculation is we have to convert. This is 1 cubic foot. We need to know how many cubic inches this is. Now, how many inches are in a foot? If you said 12 inches, you are correct. So I'm going to change this all to 12 inches, and let's find the volume of this, doing length times width times height. This ends up being 12 inches times 12 inches times 12 inches, which is, believe it or not, 1728 cubic inches. Okay, and notice 12 times 12 times 12 is 1,728, and inches times inches times inches is inches cubed. Okay, so the units actually multiply exactly the way we expect them to. Okay, so now we are ready to do this problem because we know that a cubic foot has 1,728 cubic inches in it, and we know each cubic inch is 0.698 pounds. So what we do is we're going to take what we have originally, and we're going to multiply it by this ratio. Now the key is, again, we want our answer in pounds. We're trying to figure out how many pounds there are, so we want the inches to disappear. So we want to put the inches at the bottom because then these are going to cancel out. And at the top, we'll put the 0.689 pounds. Okay? And now we're just going to multiply this out using our trusty calculator. And this is 1206, approximately I'm going to round to the nearest pound. It's approximately 1,206 pounds. Now this is insane if you think about it, to a certain extent. If you had an actual cube that was pure gold, it would weigh 1,206 pounds. So you could not lift it, most likely. I mean, almost guaranteed. I don't think there are many humans that can lift 1,206 pounds. So that is pretty interesting, at least for me. And the value of that would be, who knows? I mean, a pound of gold is, I mean, this would be possibly worth $1 million. Here, I'm going to pause and I'm going to try to find some info, and I'll let you know how much money would this be worth. All right, so I went on the internet, did a quick Google search, and as it turns out, 1 ounce of gold is equal to about $1,644 dollars. Sorry about that. Okay. And there are 16 ounces. Oh my goodness. Per each pound. So let's figure it out. Now again, the way I'm going to kind of set this up is I'm going to make these into ratios. And I'm just going to multiply out. So I know I have 1,206 pounds of gold, okay? I'm going to multiply this by, I guess, this ratio here. Now what I want is I want the pounds to be on the bottom. I think I got lucky the way I did this when I wrote it out the first time, but I need the pounds to be on the bottom because I need these to cancel out. So these are going to cancel out. 16 ounces goes on the top. And then in this ratio, I want ounces to be on the bottom. So I'm going to put 1 ounce. And each ounce is 1644. Okay? And so this would actually be really easy because I don't have to divide. I have ones on the bottom. I'm just going to multiply this by this by this. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm going to multiply all 3 of those numbers. I'm just going to do it off camera. I hope that's okay. 1,206 times 16 times 1644. And the answer is 3172264. Okay, so what is this number? Well, let's put some commas in. So 1, 2, 3, put a comma in. If you had a cubic foot of gold, it would be worth $31 million. That is incredible to me. That is a much bigger number than I thought it would be. But anyhow, there you go. So that's how you could calculate how much a cubic foot of gold is, kind of using density. All right. I hope you enjoyed this, and good luck on the Khan Academy assignment.